Hello! So today we're going to talk about the microscopic structure of bone. So if we're going to talk about microscopic structure, first we have to talk about cells, and these are the four main cells that are found in bone tissue. So osteogenic cells, gen, like generation, means forming. These are the cells that do mitosis and make all the other types of bone cells. Osteoblast. Blast means build. So these are the cells that actually create new bone. They secrete bone matrix. Remember how how all connective tissue is kind of funny because it has like a couple of cells. There's a cell, and then the whole rest of the area is considered like extracellular matrix, like this whole part. So osteoblast would be secreting that matrix. Osteocyte. Cyte means cell. So these are, when the bone cells grow up, this is what they are. Notice that it has kind of like long processes coming off of it. So the osteocyte kind of monitors the area. We mentioned how the bones store minerals like calcium. So an osteocyte is actually the thing that would notice like, hey, we have a signal that we're low on calcium. And then it would send a signal and it would say, start breaking down bone to release calcium. And then later on when you eat foods with calcium, the osteocyte could signal the osteoblast to start rebuilding it. So the osteocyte is the mature cell that's in charge of everything. And then the osteoclast. Clast means break. So osteoblast and osteoclast are opposites. These are the cells that are actually able to break down the bone matrix. Breaking down bone is called resorbing, like reabsorbing. So if the body needs to release calcium, an osteocyte will send a message to an osteoclast saying, hey, please break down the bone, resorb the bone and release the calcium. And then when the body has more calcium, it will send a message to the osteoblast, hey, please build us up some new bone and store that calcium. Osteocyte, interesting structure-function relationship between the long processes and being able to monitor things. Think of it like stretching out its arms so it can feel everything. And then also with the osteoclast, this area right here is where it's going to secrete enzymes that actually break down the bone, and it forms almost like a suction cup on the bone. Like it's able to hold tightly to it and maintain the acid like just underneath it so it doesn't resorb bone in areas we don't want it to. This is a great video that shows you osteoblast and osteoclast in action. I think it's just like 2 minutes. I want to recommend that you watch it. You can find this presentation on Canvas. And then we're going to move on now and talk more about the microscopic structure, like where the cells we just saw actually live. So maybe you recall this picture from when we did the gross anatomy of bones. This is a cross-section through the diaphysis of a bone, and I can tell that because I see the medullary cavity full of yellow bone marrow, and then this whole outside part right here is all compact bone. So this whole area in here is compact bone. There would be spongy bone if it was the epiphysis. So we're going to draw the bone structure basically with this same image, but this time we're going to add in all the microscopic structures. So I'm going to make this pretty big. And then let's go ahead and add the medullary cavity, because we'll start with the things that we're familiar with. And the medullary cavity is full of yellow bone marrow in an adult bone. So I'm just gonna add a little color for us. And then we can pretty much ignore this for the rest of our model. And then the rest of the bone. Bone is a lot of concentric circles. You might remember that from looking at bone tissue under the microscope. So I'm just going to add a few concentric circles in here. So these are like big circles that go the entire circumference of the bone. And just one more time for clarification, like that's a long bone, and the section that we're looking at is like we cut it right through the diaphysis, and that's what I'm drawing. So inside of those, the rings along the outside, we need to draw more circles. Like the inside of bone is basically full of circles. And in reality, there wouldn't be any gaps, but just give me a little bit of artistic license, please. Each one of those circles is called an osteon. That is the structural unit of bone. And, if you can believe it, what's inside of each osteon is even more circles. So we could add that. Circle, circle, circle. This is starting to give us a little bit of an idea of why bone is so strong, because it's just made up of so many layers. And again, it would be in all of the circles. I'm just not drawing all of them. Each like concentric circle of matrix is called a lamella. So let's get a different color for some clearer labeling. So like that circle right there would be a lamellae, and then that circle right there would be a lamellae. So when we put that together, the plural of that is lamella. So I'm talking about multiples. If you ever want to reference just one of them, the singular is lamellae. And this inner row is too, that we can add that in there. All of that making up our lamellae. The big circles on the outside of bone are called circumferential lamellae because they're going all the way around. What membrane are the circumferential lamellae near? Hopefully you said periosteum. Remember that membrane that goes on the outside of the bone, like right here? Like that's the periosteum. So the circumferential lamellae are just deep to the periosteum, and they would be superior to the endosteum. Okay, more. Inside of each osteon, the center is like a hollow canal where there is, I'm putting one red dot for like a red artery, and I'm going to put one blue dot for a blue vein, and then I'm going to put one yellow dot, it's going to be nerves. We normally represent both nerves and fat as yellow. So that whole section in there, I'll try to get a different color for you guys. That little section is called the central canal. And that would be present in every single one of these osteons because they all need their blood supply and they all need their nerves. And you might be thinking, like, this is really weird. Like, I don't think about bones as having nerves and blood, but like they do. They're alive. They feel things. They need their nutrients. Okay, I want to make a few more points, but I think I'm going to draw like one lamellae, or excuse me, one osteon bigger so that we can kind of like talk about a few specifics. So I'm going to circle that osteon, and then we're just going to come over here and we're just going to draw him big. Hopefully I'm not like totally confusing you guys. So there we go. I'm going to add in my lamellae. And then again, that central circle right there is called the central canal. And then inside of the central canal, I would find my artery, I would find my vein, I would find nerves. And then you might be wondering, like, you haven't said anything about cells yet. Like, where are all the cells? Remember, connective tissue is mostly matrix, so there's not very many cells. And the cells that are found there are found in the lacuna. Those are like the little holes inside of the matrix. Oops, I wanted to erase that, but looks like I'm not going to be able to, so that's okay. I just want that box to go away. Okay, let's just like go away. So, okay, that like semi-worked. I am attempting to draw a lacuna, which is a hole in the hard bone matrix, and it occurs at the junction between concentric lamellae. So, I'm drawing a hole, and it is called a lacuna. It's like a little hollow spot in the bone. And then inside of there is where I'm going to find my, what's the color we haven't used yet? We'll just make green to be our osteocytes. So like there's an osteocyte, there's an osteocyte, there's an osteocyte, there's an osteocyte, osteocyte, osteocyte. The osteoclasts and the osteoblasts are only going to come out when they are like called to work. And again, it's the osteocyte that's sending that signal to them. Oh, and I think I forgot to say this earlier, but the osteogenic cells, those were the stem cells that do mitosis, they're found in the membranes, so the periosteum and the endosteum. So that's why I'm not drawing them here, because they're in a separate part of the bone. What else? These little osteocytes, other cells, they need to be able to communicate with the rest of the bone. So coming off of each lacuna, there's these like little teeny canals that actually connect all the osteocytes to other osteocytes. So I'm not doing a great job drawing this, but what I'm attempting to draw is spaces in the bone, kind of like tunnels. That's a good word for it. Tunnels that are going through the bone, and that allows one osteocyte to communicate with another osteocyte. It can send a signal, it can receive nutrients and oxygen, it can get rid of its waste because they're all connected. This series of canals is called canaliculi, and that literally means like tiny canals that connect everything. I hope that I haven't totally confused you. I know that it's a lot. I'm going to show you some real pictures now, and then we'll label everything and we'll compare it. So, here's what we just drew, kind of. So we cut the bone in half. I drew a full circle, and in this image, for whatever reason, they just decided to only draw like a quarter of the circle, but like you can picture it like the rest of the bone. Like this would be the whole circular bone, but they just drew half of it. And we can see in the middle our medullary cavity, and I can see spongy bone on the side of it. They don't have the bone marrow drawn, so we can actually see the spongy bone. And then each little unit of concentric circles is an osteon. So like, that's an osteon, that's an osteon, that's an osteon, that's an osteon. And then in the middle of each osteon, we have our central canal, where the blood vessels and the nerves are. We can also see the circumferential lamellae going around the side. They included the periosteum in theirs. Look, there's blood vessels inside of it, and all of this is going to be continuous. Oh yeah, here's another nice thing in this diagram is like, look at this. You can see the central canal goes like all the way down the long axis of the bone, and it connects into the medullary cavity. So it's like crazy. All of our bone is connected, and all of it's able to communicate with each other. Maybe you're not as surprised at that by me, but like, you just don't think of bone doing that. This is one osteon. Sorry, you can't see me pointing. This is one osteon, but it's kind of like if you have a telescope where you can pull it out. So we've taken this osteon and we have pulled it out right here so that we can take a closer look at it. So again, if we were looking at it sideways, we would see the three circles, we would see the arteries and the veins and the nerves. But since it has this nice view where it looks like it's been pulled apart, we can see the collagen fibers that make up each individual lamella. And I want to point this out. Notice how these ones are like oriented to the left, and then these ones are oriented to the right, and then these ones are oriented to the left. We have like an every other pattern. I wonder why. This is a really interesting structure. It probably has some sort of function. Yes, this makes our bone really good at being able to resist a twisting force. Like if all of the lamellae, like if all the fibers faced in one direction, if you tried to twist the bone, it might actually turn, and that would be bad. But because we have some that way, and then some this way, and then some that way, it's able to resist twisting in any direction. So, pretty nice example. And then here we have zoomed in to just one osteon. So like that was our osteon from before, and now in this image we're just looking at like this little chunk of it right there. And you can see a really nice view of the lacuna. The lacuna again is like a hole in the matrix, and then the osteocyte, the little purple cell right there. And then here's the canals that I was trying to draw earlier, the canaliculi that allow everything to communicate. Here is a different view of that. So if we're looking at this picture over here, you might kind of recognize that from when we looked at these under the microscope. So here is an osteon, and then it would have its lamella, and then we can see the little things like there's a lacuna, there's a lacuna, there's a lacuna, that might be a lacuna, that's a lacuna. Ooh, lots of lacunas over here. And again, lacuna's the hole. I can't see the osteocyte, but I know that osteocyte would be there, and osteocyte and osteocyte. This big hole in the center is the central canal that's going to have the arteries, the veins, and the nerves. And then this picture is maybe even easier to see. Central canal, lacuna, 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 and all of these lamellae. I really wish I could look at your face and try to see if this is making any sense. Hopefully it is. And here is another microscopic image where you can just see multiple osteons. You can kind of get an idea of how they would go together. So osteon, central canal, lacuna, another osteon, another osteon. Really nice tree ring structure going on here. I want to also recommend that you watch this movie. It's another like 2-minute movie, but it kind of like takes you inside of the bone structure, and you're going to go like into a central canal, and it really helps you visualize it. And please email me your questions. I would be happy to meet with you and we can talk one-on-one. Thanks.